Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? Hi, Corey.
Hi, everybody.
I think again, our color coordination is on par at the moment. I was there this morning. I was like, wait, what color top have you got on, Corey? And he was like black. I was like, oh my god, we're just so in sync. That 5 hour times is difference. That's doing something. But yeah, hello everyone. So the plan for this session, we're going to start off with answering some of the questions that were on the comments from last week, along with any questions that you guys have about the novel clock now or how to use it in Novelcrafter. And then we're going to go more into the cozies and like how to, how cozies differ from other like genres and subgenres of detective mystery fiction, and then like how we can apply this to a story that's already been started, like our cozy mystery from last year. Yeah, hi Nikki, hi Jean-Luc. So yeah, we'll kick off while everyone's coming in with answering some questions, and then yeah, go into things. So, I mean, first of all, thank you for your love, guys. We really appreciated all the comments, just in general. Like, it makes us happy that people are enjoying the stuff that we're doing. Validation is great. um, so I think for the first question, well, so first of all, Jay Cleaver, we're always going to be like that with outlines. I know I was like that when I first did. I was like, damn it, now I want to rewrite everything. But if you're happy with your draft, then that's fine. If not, you can go through, take what you need. But yeah. And for James Finley, we are in the process of making a template of sorts for this. At the moment, what we do is we've kind of copied bits just from the novel clock course, but there is going to be an official template kind of thing coming out at some point in the next few weeks. Um,
Yep,
yeah, sorry,
that's
we
as
can't be
much as we
more.
can say.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, we can't be more specific. But yeah, it's going to come soon. We're going to have it. But yeah. So I would like to know how to get Novelcrafter to start with an act labeled Act Zero. Novelcrafter won't allow me to do that. Okay, so yes, you kind of have to do a bit of a tweak, kind of like how when doing a prologue. So if we go through and add an act, and it says Act 8, I'm going to drag that uh, to the top, and you can see now it's gone to the new Act 1. And even if I name it Act 0, nothing changes. So what you need to do is go on the actions menu for the act and then click disable numeration, and then it moves everything back to how it should be with the new numeration. This would be exactly the same as if you were doing like a prologue, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. Oh, Jean-Luc says that new outline really worked great. Got my third book started with that. Amazing. Like, yeah, yeah. You go. Everyone needs to. We need to. We can beast out things with these. And then Prosit says, how to use Novelcrafter to write serialized fiction or web novels that have 100+ chapters. So I guess that maybe this wouldn't be quite the same, but it'd be. I guess Corey might be better to tackle it because you've done using this kind of like over a series of books, which is hundreds of thousands of words, which I guess would be the best comparison.
Yeah, although I don't have them like all in the same, novel crafter novel. I
No.
have them like as separate novels, and then I create summaries for them that I make codex entries just so, and I generally make them. Oh, well, I try using global entries if they work or if I tweak them, but even if I can just like reference a prior book when I'm, say, writing a scene, or just chatting in general, that's what
Yeah.
tends to work like best for me.
Yeah. I mean, like, if I. So I've done a little bit. If I go into my novel, The Wolf in Red, um, I decided to split my serialized fiction into kind of like episodes, kind of thinking of it more as a TV series. So I have each episode of like 12 chapters in an act, and then these are all there. So by the time you've got that, that's like 8 acts. And if we were then to adjust that to the novel clock, which I don't know if that's quite what you were asking, but you could, each episode might end up being a chapter, but you've covered, or like each like episode or two might be an act, and you can like work it out that way, and they'll just be going into a lot more detail than a novel necessarily would be my thought if you were wanting to try and apply that. um okay, yeah. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask them throughout. I've shared a link to this in in the chat thread. I will try and remember as soon as I'm back on my computer after the stream, because I go and eat my dinner straight after this. So um, I'll put it on the chat as well, but you'll have it here. So what is a cozy mystery? Cozies are a subgenre of crime fiction where kind of all the not safe for work stuff happens like off stage. So you have the body, but you don't necessarily, like, you don't see the violence or anything that kind of occurs to get the body to where it is. The detectives an amateur sleuth, and the crime and detection take place in kind of like a small, intimate community. Always pizza. Curry tonight, but always pizza. Pizza is tomorrow. Um, think of these as like basically the exact opposite of on the scale to like hard-boiled detective fiction. Like, we're keeping things like very chill, and you aren't seeing the seedy side of towns or anything like that. It's usually very, despite the murder, it's very pure, which I
Yep.
guess, yeah, it's like, it shouldn't make sense, but in a cozy mystery it does. So things include like Poirot, Murder She Wrote, Father Brown, Rosemary and Thyme. And this is where I realized that my knowledge is skewed to the UK TV market. So, Corey, can you give me some more
Columbo.
American examples? Oh,
Yeah.
Columbo.
Well, Murder She Wrote is certainly an American
That is
example, but
true. It's
uh,
on UK TV so much, though, as is Columbo.
yeah,
Would you
yeah.
call Columbo a cozy?
It tends to be cozy, because it tends not to be overly violent, and
That is
generally
true.
speaking, the murders are like fairly sympathetic. So it's like you
Yeah.
generally like you can have some empathy for them.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I was thinking about cozy mysteries is like usually the sleuth is not in mortal danger. The way
That is
like a
true.
thriller mystery, it's like you don't know if like the sleuth is going to last into the next scene.
That Yeah, that is true. Although I'm going to point out too many notes. Gabe, R.I.P. You should not have been killed. That's still like, it gets me every time. Okay. So what other American cozies can you think of? Just so I can give people a bit of,
No, I mean honestly, like Murder She Wrote is like the main one. I think that's the
yeah,
one that like everybody associates with cozies
that's
in
fine.
the
Yeah,
US. Yeah.
because as I say, like even Columbo, like, well, British TV, all of these are on. Um, so yeah. Okay, no, that's good to know. So yeah, so I guess like a lot of books though, like that I've seen, like when I go on Kindle, like Unlimited or just like general, there's a lot set in like small town America, but I think there's very much like a in UK TV, there's a very much a cult classic for kind of like your cozies. Like, you have as
Yeah.
many cozy detective series as you do the kind of the grittier like Sherwood or whatever kind of things.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah. So it's interesting how, like, yeah, different um cultures, I guess, have different like preferences.
Yeah, I
Um
can give you an example of what isn't an American cozy, which would be like the X-Files. That's not a cozy mystery.
that's not a cozy. Yeah, I kind of always like, I wasn't really sure. It's like Ironside was another one that kind of is on TV quite a lot. And that's maybe not a cozy because it is a little bit more gritty, but it's still very much like, oh,
Yeah.
things get closed off. Yeah, oh, Shetland in the UK. I would have to, would I call that a cozy? I don't know if I'd call it, like, it's a crime drama, but I wouldn't necessarily call it cozy. But then now I'm like, I need to rewatch it. um, but also a good show, and like great accents. But yeah, so how do cozies differ from the other detective stuff? Um, so we don't start off with a big bang here. Like we're unfolding at a relaxed pace. There are lowish stakes. The focus is kind of more on the community and how the crime affects them, rather like, and the crime will appear like later, and it's like there is the crime, but it's more on how it affects everything around it. Often the people that die are newcomers to the town or are like somehow tangentially related. Um, they're more often than not like they don't you don't have them as like the well loved characters and stuff. Um, Investigations are very like dialogue focused rather than action focused. Like you don't get big tense scenes, like shootouts or whatever. Um, the the pacing is often broken up with like the hobbies like USP. They're yeah, the protagonist's hobby, their USP. They're just doing other stuff to kind of break it up. The tension. These stories will take place over weeks, whereas a lot of detective fiction will take place over hours or days, depending.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
you see like your thrillers like just gonna be like bam 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 bam. Whereas yeah, cozy is like very long winded. Um, you don't usually see that much science based evidence, and protocol is completely thrown out the window. You don't see any DNA evidence, like unless you happen to have like a scientist friend or something. Like it's very much kind of on observation. And you have a lot more focus on the personal life of the sleuth. Um, like for me, actually, cozies are one of the few genres that I don't mind hearing about the personal life of the sleuth. I really, it's this is definitely like a personal preference, but when it's like a really gritty thing and like I'm hearing about the detective's divorce, I'm like, I don't care. I
Yep.
just want to know about the crime. Stop being
Yeah,
solved.
and like for a cozy, like the personal life of the sleuth is usually like positive and engaging,
Yeah,
and like a mystery thriller, usually the sleuth is like morally ambiguous. It's
yeah,
know.
yeah. So it's kind of yeah, it's very different like kind of types, but yeah, I find Um, the that always like comes under the unnecessary drama umbrella for me. Like I feel like that is just such a that's my like personal pet peeve in television. Especially like for me, like I find American TV series harder to watch because they're longer and so they need to put in unnecessary drama to pad out the actual storyline. But I think that's also maybe an attention span thing. So
Yeah.
Okay, enough random rambling. Key structural moments. So you have the discovery of the body, which usually occurs later than in other subgenres, especially like the first book where you're trying to like establish the mood. The bulk of the story is taken up by the middle acts, i.e., the investigation, and the beginning and the end. Like especially in the 12-act system, are kind of like a shorter and kind of tied up a bit tighter. The There is like often a drawing room resolution, i.e., the thing like Poirot, Miss Marple, Murder She Wrote, where you have like the sleuth explaining the findings to everyone. Sherlock Holmes, I guess, very much that, even though it's not a cozy. And then once the killer's found, everything's kind of wrapped up really quickly. Um, like you'll just find that like it's getting ready for the next book. The protagonist, if it's a series, like there is room to develop them later. You don't need to give them a conclusion because the next book's gonna kind of push
Right.
that
Right.
forward. Especially because you see some that are like 30-book series, so you have plenty of time to wrap up all your loose ends. Um, okay, John Luke says lots of American series jump to the conclusion too fast and don't develop the personal side enough, in your opinion. Okay. Yeah, I think it depends on like I think partially what show it is, but also how they're doing it. Like there's I think it happens a lot in like the romance or like the relationship between characters that they kind of like there is that like um disconnect for me. But yeah. So in addition to all that, cozies have a very predictable whodunit structure. So a murder disrupts the community. We're introduced to the suspects. Each have a plausible motive and opportunity at this point. Red herrings are also introduced. I think Corey was saying this is more so in a cozy than it is in other genres. Was that what you were
Yeah,
saying? Yeah.
yeah, usually, yeah.
The amateur sleuth will then systematically gather clues through observation, interviews, and usually a bit of general snooping. Not really breaking like too many laws, just trespassing. Um, I say just trespassing, but it's like yeah, they it's like they're snooping around, but they're not like breaking and entering. It's more
Yep,
a if they're left in a room, they might like start looking at papers left open on a table,
yep.
that kind of
I
stuff.
think your phrase of gentle snooping is perfect there because
Yeah,
that's very much the cozy vibe.
yeah. The sleuth will then piece together the clues, often accumulating in like a reveal scene where they explain their reasoning and identify the killer. And this often happens in a very like low stakes way. Like in doing this, the sleuth isn't in huge danger. Like they've got either like a police officer there helping them and like is there ready to defend them. I always think like they'll like Jessica Fletcher where they'll do a confession, they'll pull out a gun and then suddenly like three police officers will appear and be like, ready to take them down. So it's kind of like very much a low stakes kind of end. And then once the crime is solved, the community is restored to its previous state of harmony for now. And something to bear in mind, like when we were talking about the novel clock 2 weeks ago, movies have linear pacing. And that's why it's like 10 minutes an act. Whereas we don't need to do that for cozies or other genres of novel. It's up to us to decide on how we want to do the pacing.
Yep. And
Um,
like when we were playing with this particular cozy mystery,
yeah.
um we were noticing that too. Act 10 is like where the sleuth puts all the pieces together. Act 11 is kind of the revealing. Act 2 is the reset to the community.
Yeah. So like acts 11 and 12 might just be a chapter each, maybe a little longer, but they do it feels fairly abrupt in a cozy compared to like other genres.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Mm. So Joe says usually the villain is either a Scooby Doo type villain, like over the top, mustache twirling, or they're sympathetic and the death was accidental, they didn't mean to do it, etc. Or there's like a very good reason, like not necessarily a reason that excuses what they've done, but a reason that we empathize with, and we're kind of like, would you kind of like more a kind of is that something that you would do if you were in that situation kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
now Joe has me thinking of Snidely Whiplash twirling his mustache. So,
yeah.
and yeah, uh-uh.
So now we're going to take this into the novel clock. There isn't really that much, if anything, with the actual novel clock structure that you need to change. Looking at our observations when we were just kind of like trying to plot things out in our head, we saw that it was the length of time we devoted to each act that shifts, and where some moments within the act happen, they might happen a bit later in, but we still have each act. And because the cozies are often a series, the end wrap up is not as comprehensive as in other one shot series or one shot stories. Um, we have other series to wrap up those points. Yeah. Um I well we were saying that both the Hercule Poirot series and Columbo could be considered cozies. So Columbo is very different in how it structures it in that the protagonist is almost the villain because you kind of see everything through their eyes. Um but it still has that very kind of like cozy wholesome vibe. Like the nearest Columbo has come to death is not eating a pie. Um, or was it? Or was it the marmalade? It was marmalade. My bad.
Yeah.
And what would
There's also another episode where a chef tries to kill him too. So,
yeah,
but
but even
but yeah,
then,
generally speaking, he's never a danger.
yeah, and like it's poison in food, which again is a very cozy. I say cozy way to kill. It's a very typical of
Yeah,
cozy mysteries way to kill.
that's right.
Poirot novels, what would you say? Cause they do have a lot of that kind of same
Yeah.
vibe. I
Nope.
guess
I
it's
mean
like
both Miss Marple and Poirot. Miss Marple is much
yeah,
closer to cozy though,
she's the
right?
quintessential cozy
And
kind of.
it's like not her like normal job, whereas Poirot is a
Mm,
detective, so
yeah,
but they are very similar in that the community resets to normal at the end, which is also like how a sitcom works too. It's
yeah,
like at the end of each sitcom the world resets back to the way it was.
yeah. There are no consequences for what happened in that episode.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I think that's strange because I mean, there probably are sitcoms in the UK, but there aren't to the extent that America has them. Like when you think of like Friends and things. Um, that's
They're
interesting.
kind of a dying breed in the US also.
Yeah,
So
very like
but
90s and noughties kind of
yeah,
TV.
yeah, but as far as like structure goes, it's very, very
Yeah,
similar.
yeah. Okay, so they were just asking, just wanted to wrap this concept in my head. Really loving the novel structure. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all of these stories they have a lot of differences in various aspects, but it's kind of more the core of the the nature of the crime, how things are solved, kind of the amount of violence and the stakes, and kind of like that tension. Like you feel, I think, your heart doesn't go into palpitations when watching them. You don't feel like a secondhand adrenaline rush as much as you
That's
would
right.
in like a thriller. I try and yeah, I think that's probably the best way I can kind of explain it. Like you feel kind of like you're in safe hands. Um, so yeah, so Corey and I, when planning for this session, we went into our Labrador's letters and leads, and we were looking at the 12 acts, and we first of all took the a short version, and was just like, can you summarize, um, organize the outline using the 12 acts? And then we have the 12 acts there. And it gave a very kind of like open view. Like you can see here, like acts 5, 6, 7 are the bulk of the story. Um, and then you have some, and then again, it very quickly, the last three acts are a chapter each. And this was just literally Gemini Pro 2.5. And literally, please help me organize my outline using the 12 acts. So,
Yeah, and
um,
I think Kate, you when you were looking at this novel, I think it was so old that you saw that you had been using Claude 2 on it, so
yeah, I
it
had
is
Claude
ancient.
2 and Gemini. Well, it was back in the days where Gemini had a six-figure context window.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the millions, it was 131,000 tokens. And back where a token was a character as well. Like this was, it feels like ancient history. So yeah, this book was written like January, February last year, or like started for classes. So it was very interesting actually using this as a way to take the knowledge and the story summary and kind of put it in a way to like refresh my memory. Like we were both looking at it and we were like, oh, that's what happened, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So we also then had a second chat where we took if I click on there, scroll to beginning, open this wider, um, exact same question, only I had a longer version of the 12 acts, essentially copy and pasted from the articles. This is going to be part of the template that we're working on, so don't worry about that. It will be out in a few weeks' time, at some point in the near future. Um, and this went a lot more in depth. And because of this, there were other bits that were like that moved away from what the initial plotline had. You'll notice that there's 7 acts here. That's just because I was separating them for doing different bits of work. Like Act 2 is when I was doing the uh, prose generation tests, and I've just archived the other scenes. Like it isn't the Act 2. So just to clarify that, if anyone wonders. Um, but I really like this. So like, here it had kind of like the introducing of everyone. It was kind of like, okay, well, we're going to do this. It's given like a few chapters. Like it's tried to map. So chapter 1, chapter 3 and 4. It's not used chapter 2 because it doesn't fit in with the 12-act structure. It was like, I don't see where this maps. So that's an interesting thing. Something with actually the shorter version. I really liked how they had a glimpse of the tensions caused by outsiders eyeing the manor house. And then I was like, oh, maybe then we start with the protests and we like move the start to something that's a bit more in action. And that kind
Yeah.
of started giving me ideas. And I think that's the thing. When using these like prompts and structure, you don't have to take this all verbatim. Use the bits that you like. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I've got ideas. I now need to like start working on these and like placing them in myself. But there are other bits here that I really like. Um, so yeah, so you can see like there's different scuffles, um, the bar fight, the car crash moment is Clarence's death, and you'll notice that this car crash moment is at the end of Act 2. We have the denial and resistance, and then untethered and mentor, and again the feather that tips the scales is the second death, kind of like the intended death. And that's happening again at the very end. And it's actually, in this case, it's quite big because it's another death, which might be
Hmm.
something that happens in a cozy. Or it could be that your first death is this and the car crash is actually something else that's smaller but is setting everything into motion. I'm trying to think of an example now. Um,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, because like for like for example, like for a cozy, having two deaths is pretty big for a cozy. Usually it's just one,
Mm.
you know. Um, but that was like an interesting idea that it came up with in chat, you know.
Yeah, well, I think it was we were talking about like I think my idea actually when I started, I was like, I just had this idea of the postman dying on the sleuth's doorstep, and that was how they got into sleuthing because there was like, well, how does a normal person, just like an everyday person, like I was like, well, what would drive me to investigate a death? And I was like, well, I'd have to literally see them like at my feet to
Yep,
have the
yep.
impetus to go into it. And I was like, well, okay, well, we're having them die at her feet, like that kind of thing. And then we also wanted something that was a very like non-gory death. Like it was something that can seem almost innocent. And it was like, okay, well, the postie has it, and it's like, well, what if it's an allergy rather than a poison? And it kind of like spiraled from there. There's a lot of brainstorming done during like the streams on that.
Yep.
Um, I think like with in the kind of the shorter version, you can see a lot of the chapters then get pushed into like Act 5, 6, 7, 8. And interestingly enough, um, something that contrasted, I think also this is why it's always good to run a prompt like this twice on 2 clean chats because it will give you different options. So whereas in the shorter version, it had um after the lowest point, Sparky uncovers a clue, um, hinting to Hannah's identity. This version has this happen at the end of Act 8, and then is like the lowest point is kind of when she's not believed about this.
Hmm.
Um, and then it goes into others. And I was like, okay, well, that's very interesting to be like, actually, AI is saying with the pacing that you've written so far, actually you've not got a true low point yet. Um, and that is something that is needed, even though it's a cozy. It might not be as drastic as I don't know, like someone's dying. That's already happened, but we've got something still needs to happen to give you that the like, care, love, to make you love the character. Um, so I thought that was also very interesting. And so it was suggesting adding some more bits in, and it kind of meant that, okay, well, there's stuff now that I can work with. Um, I was thinking, like, does anyone have any questions, or do you want me to maybe, like, us to start going through the cozy in person, to be like, okay, here's how you can start mapping out the bits like pre the deaths, and we can like do like large scale kind of like reworkings of chapters and like moving them around to get the structure, and then we can move on after, because we've got half an hour left, so we've got like a good chunk of time. And what do you think, Corey, as well? Like,
Yeah, I mean, just before going to that, one of the things that's really obvious when people read through it is you'll see that, like, beginning with, especially like even Act 9, but especially like Act 10, the pacing gets really compressed. And that's like
yeah,
super typical for a cozy.
yeah, absolutely. Let me add some of these. So this would be then AI chat long version of. I keep putting NC and then being like, well, that could be novel clock or um, Novelcrafter. So let me put these in for you guys, just in case anyone has any desire to read them. There is absolutely no pressure, but if you wanted to see the differences, um, yeah. So I think what I'll do is I'll close the sidebar, open this. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just because I'm going to be moving things around and I just want a bit more real estate, and then we'll zoom in when we need to read stuff.
Cool.
I think I'm going to add all the acts in. I'm going to make the decision that Act Zero is, because this is all going to be told from Maya's point of view. I might change her name as well because Maya's become such an AIism since then, which is really frustrating. So I need to think of another name. If anyone has any female name ideas, let me know. Um, yeah, I think kind of moving things around and kind of showing how we're going to kind of like roughly fit things into this like 12 act structure will do good. I
Yeah.
like that it gave a theme hint as well. Her journey involves moving from a quiet, ordered life to embracing her observant nature and sense of responsibility to protect her community. Her initial weakness might be avoiding conflicts, or underestimating her own capabilities. Um, okay, would you experiment with other outlines too? For non-writers, would be interesting to see other frameworks. Not in this stream, but yeah, I mean, we could totally do other like outlines and show how they function and do classes on those. I think we'd enjoy chatting about other bits. Um, I know that there are a lot of romance writers, so I guess maybe something on like romancing the beat, I believe, is one of the big ones there. Save the cat, all that kind of thing. But this is Corey's baby. This is what he has devoted the last 9 months to.
It's
Well, I
longer
mean,
than
I
that.
say
It's
nine
like
months,
6 years.
9 years. Well, 6 years, but like 9 months writing the course, because it was about July that you started writing it.
Yep.
June, July,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. But there's always like a thousand other things going on in parallel too.
I
So
mean, true, true, true.
Jean-Luc.
Mm. You may have to time, but I have not pizza to eat.
And I'm not
Okay.
sure anyone would like to read a romance that I might write because I don't know how to write one.
Yeah, we're talking about two people who are very much. Well, I mean, this would be like the coziest, wholesome, most awkward romance ever that would get written. Like, we'd be like, I don't know, they adopt a dog together. That's romance, right?
Yeah,
They make some
with dogs,
chocolate
dragons,
muffins.
and spaceships, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. We could do that. Like maybe we'll like put some like H.G. Wells in, and it'll be like the green flashes coming from Mars are actually what killed the dinosaurs, and that's where we get our spaceships, and then it just ends up being a War of the Worlds fan fiction.
Yeah, my wife Nanita is always telling me that I need like more love interests in my sci-fi stories, but
And
it's
I'm like,
hard.
but that's not the point. The point is the sci-fi, the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. So, so I'm thinking, okay, instantly that this idea of the protests and moving them forward. Um, Emery's okay. Well, we're gonna end up making a dinosaur romance. It'll end up being like a kid's book about the end of the world. Um, so I'm going to say that um, we're gonna put this scene with the protest um at the front. I might change a little bit, but I feel like starting actually with the protest, you're introducing the manor. It's kind of
Mhm.
a bit more action orientated, but also you get to see the character not just in her job. And I guess that would be a good way of introducing different characters because as you're moving around this protest, you will see other people and there'll be like conflict and stuff. So I
Yep.
feel like that is a good spot. I might then archive this. Sad face. Bye. And I'm going to archive the family dinner. Might come up later, might bring it back, but getting rid of that for now. Um, and I think maybe you could also go for the. Oh, this was the bar fight chapter back in the day when we were testing out how to write not safe for work content. Um, so it was all the different models that we were testing to see which wrote the fight scene the best. Um, so at this point, I'm not going to edit the summaries. I'm just going to be like, okay, well, where do things go? Um, so as we have the 12 acts, if only we could pin this as well. Okay, so Act One is where we're getting the emotional attachment. We're seeing some of their flaws. By the end of the Act One, we have a protagonist that's quite a mixed bag. They're likable but flawed. So I'm going to say that's probably enough. Those two chapters for Act One. We're going to continue Act Two, and then like at the end is the death. So this will go in here. She might not have a hangover this time. But like we'll have the death there. I feel maybe there needs to be another chapter in there because this is going to kind of be like a very short chapter.
Hmm.
Um, to be fair, we could do something with this. Again, I'm going to rewrite bits after, so it's fine that this is just like um about it being in the shop. But I think introducing her life is important. Um, you can have a bit of the response of that day and the tensions and kind of like feedback, and so you get more of the aftermath before the first death, so then you kind of getting more of an idea of people and their thoughts. That's kind of how I'm thinking about that, kind of like you want a bit of breathing space after this like tense evening and then like the day after, and maybe um various people post stuff.
Yeah, because like
um
in a cozy, the death is as much a surprise to the reader as it is to the sleuth. Um, Whereas like in a mystery thriller, it's kind of baked into the world, you know.
yeah. And yeah, I kind of put here we want a bit of breathing space. I feel like we need to have like a false sense of security. People, I mean, obviously you all know, and we know, but I feel like reading it, if you didn't read the blurb, which probably would spoil things actually, you wouldn't necessarily think that the postie is going to be the person that dies. Like it feels like it's very much geared to, someone at the protests, and suddenly it's just like, oh, the postie is dead. Wait, what? And then kind of it would be very unexpected. It's not the person who, like in quotation marks, deserves to die in the story sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
if you look at the lessons for the novel clock for Act Two, there's often like period of normalcy or even like positive thing for the protagonist before the car crash, because the car crash needs to feel, like a change.
Yeah. Okay, so Act 3, denial and resistance. Um, so yeah, so we have this like subdued family dinner. Um, Nora's worry about nut allergies. Um, so I think that was also put here, kind of been like, well, it's different kind of questionings. Delete, yes. And then, okay, right, yeah. Let me just add this in. Just moving things around, when you like try to sort things out. Um, that went there. Then this will go here. And the second car crash is um, I'm gonna add this because I quite like this. It's a different description to what we had here, but it's like a
Hmm.
good one. Um, and we've kind of got the whole thing of Maya is only asking these questions because she's kind of like her neighbor is worried that she's the cause of the death, and so it's kind of like a placating kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, and this is because this is a kind of a traditional cozy seen from like the POV of the sleuth. It's like quite different for like Columbo, because
yeah,
the kind of usually in a Columbo episode, like the can't go home moment at the end of Act Three is like Columbo showing up and the
yeah.
murderer, obviously their life changes at that point. And Act Four for the murderer is just trying to get a sense as to how in the heck they're going to interact with this weird detective, you know.
They're like, oh my god. And also like it's kind of that waiting for that moment that they realize that he's not as much of a bumbling idiot as they thought, which is often like the when you get that like knockdown at like after Act 6, they think they've won, and then they're
Yeah.
suddenly like, oh no, he's actually cottoning on to them, and they think, oh no, it's fine, I can still get on with this, I can still get
Yep.
away with this, but they're kind of
Because
like
they're
they
smart.
stop, yeah, because they're smart, but they're no longer underestimating him, which is yeah a big thing because until that point they think, oh, he's just like a quack, it's gonna be easy, I've bribed these people, whatever, like this is all gonna be fine. Okay, so Act 5 is like one of these longer ones. So um so Robert says, hi, may I just ask quickly, how many words in every act and chapter is the novel clock? This might depend on the size of your novel, but is there a close estimate that you'd recommend? So, I mean, I'm going to say what I know off the top of my head is that in screenplays, it would be very equidistant, but obviously this is going to change per genre. Um, Corey, you can go into the nuances of,
No, so what I do personally is I usually have about 6 chapters per act, and my chapters tend to be like around 1,500 words.
yeah, so like quite
Um,
short compared to some genres. So,
yeah, yeah. And that's also like my writing style. Now, when I write short stories, I use each of the acts as like a beat in the short story. And so I usually will write about 400 words per beat. So it
yeah,
brings like the short story in like around 5,000. But obviously, like, let's say for a novella, you might still have just like those 12 beats, or you might have, say, two or three beats per act,
yeah.
Um,
And
it's very
yeah,
flexible.
and I think for like, say, for cozy mysteries that we're doing, we're noticing that actually the bulk of this is going to be in the middle. So it might be that the middle four acts have like 40,000 of your um 80,000 words, and
Mhm.
then there's 8 acts having the other 40,000. So it might be like, you notice there's a big, like, it kind of like has that curve that goes up and down for word distribution. um I think kind of like you, when looking through, you'll kind of know instinctively when something feels right. But I think a starting point of having them all kind of equidistant through the novel will give you a sense of where to start, because once you've got that, you can then be like, no, this is dragging, I want this to be shorter, and then you can start making those tweaks. So I mean, there's like a starting point. Yeah, a good starting point is having them all kind of being similar-ish lengths, and just divide your word count goal by 12. um Unless you have an act 0, and then I guess it'd be like 12 plus a little bit for
Yeah.
act 13.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, the Act Zero can literally be like the first sentence of chapter one. So I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be. Yeah, but like we were finding when we were just like workshopping this on Wednesday, um, for a cozy, the pacing is like quite different. And so it is very genre specific.
yeah.
Um, Same
And I
thing
think, like,
applies to a short story too.
yeah,
If you're writing a particular short story, you might devote very little to act one, especially if it's like a series of short stories where like maybe by the second short story, you don't need to explain too much about the world. You can like get right into it.
yeah. Or like if you were doing, say, a short story based on the worlds that you've already written novels for. Like if you were doing something as like an email newsletter giveaway, or whatever, you would already have all this world building, and you can kind of go in and be like, okay, well, that your readers have got this backstory, and you can kind of like feel a little bit more secure, that they will understand your world.
Yeah. And even though folks think of like hooks as like the end of a scene or end of a chapter, um, as you're writing, every couple of paragraphs, you kind of need a mini hook because you always want to just keep the reader engaged in turning pages.
Yeah,
And like for like a cozy, it wouldn't make sense to write like a huge number of scenes for act one because it we just really have to introduce the sleuth. Um, you know,
yeah. You will kind of want to keep it like that is the priority.
yeah. And unlike other genre fiction stories, this really isn't about like the personal growth of the sleuth and how they overcome adversity. It's like how does the sleuth solve this mystery? It's very
Yeah.
contained.
Um, I like how, even though I didn't specify that this was Jim, I just said cousin mentions. It picked the right cousin, because I think there's at least two cousins, and one of them's a paramedic and one of them's a police officer. So it's kind of like
Hopefully, they're not both named Jim.
they are both not named Jim. But it's just one of them I believe. So let's go into the Rivers family. Yes, we have Jim, Maya's cousin. We have a brother, and there is Sophie, and is also Maya's cousin. She's a paramedic, I believe. I don't know. I don't think I've put anything in, but she's a paramedic. All of Maya's family are like in the emergency services, and so the running joke is that she didn't join the emergency services because she's like scared of blood, or like has a phobia of blood and so faints. But she then ends up being this sleuth.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah. Okay. So this is Act 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm moving these around, and then I'm going to go back to AI and kind of start chatting with it. I just want to kind of get these. I love how I then put in brackets like what each bit is,
Hmm.
like the minor setbacks, the minor victories, or like apparent victories.
I can't remember. This was Gemini, right?
Yeah, Gemini
Yeah,
2.5.
yeah, yeah. It is definitely my favorite for outlining right now.
Yeah. Um, couldn't. We used Midjourney. I think I just like asked it to do like a digital comic style.
Hmm.
Yeah, the images are very cute. Let me. But yeah, it was just like that. Um, and like I love the Sparky one. He just looks so dorky. Um, yeah. So like I probably wouldn't use these are all just like kind of like they were done just to give an idea, like a general idea of like what I wanted. But yeah, no, I'm very partial to them.
Yeah, I,
Um,
I feel bad when my codex doesn't have any pictures, even
y-
if it's not even characters, just like other, yeah,
yeah, yeah, it needs something. And yeah, it's like, and especially because these are kind of like not throwaway novels, but they're probably the projects I do on stream are like most likely never going to see the light of day, which is sad. But they're fun to do. So mainly because
No, I mean, and like here, it's fun to come back to it because what author doesn't have like 1,000 completed or partially completed works just laying around? It's like
exactly,
lots of people do, and even if it's like a super simple idea too.
yeah.
Yeah, because
No, I.
yeah, I have this directory on my Google Drive where it's just like file after file after file of just like one sentence ideas.
Oh my god, yes, absolutely. That is, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I totally agree with Jean-Luc. Just having a picture really helps, spark the
yes,
imagination.
yeah. No, absolutely. It kind of gives you that like, oh, things are starting. Um, ah, didn't mean to
Yeah,
do that.
one of the things that I've been having fun of is just uploading cover artwork from my prior books into GPT-4o, and then asking it to make a realistic image, like an actual person based on because they're illustration style. Like it's interesting how how it comes up with like real looking humans based on those.
Yeah. Corey calling us all out. Yeah, I mean, there are so many like things. I'll just have like on my Novelcrafter account, I've got so many blank novels that just have like a story pitch in. Like, I'll just make a story pitch. I'll put a filler novel with something to like, title to help me, and there's just like the graveyard of ideas. No, I don't like that scene. Yep. I feed my codex entries to Midjourney. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when image creation first came out for GPT-4o, I was just taking like paragraphs from my novels and pasting them in there and
Yeah,
seeing what it generated. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, it
it's so
generates
much
some
fun.
very interesting images.
Yeah, like it's really cool what image generation can do these days, especially when you're just wanting it for like spitballing ideas, because this is the kind of thing that you would otherwise go onto like your like stock image sites, or you'd be like scrolling Pinterest looking for things like they're not
Yeah.
images that are going to go into a book or anything. It's just getting that inspiration and being able to visualize what you see in your head, especially like if you struggle with being able to like form pictures from words, having AI be able to like give an image and then be like, yes, no, that is what I intend by this string of words. So yeah, here's where they have like they're like, no, okay, let's drag these two
Hmm.
down. Um, that is act thingy. So then it suggested some bits, and then I think what um
Yeah, and even cozies usually, there's a pretty distinct like act act nine. Um, and it's almost always preceded by kind of a seems like a win for the sleuth, but not quite yet. And that that was also a prior comment that a lot of times it feels like it ends prematurely, and that's true in movies too that don't
yeah.
incorporate this.
Yeah, so like look at movies that are like 90 minutes rather than 2 hours
Yep.
and 3 acts entirely gone. Um,
What's often worse though is 2 hour movies that are 3 hours.
oh my god, yeah. I think that's again, it's dragging things out
I,
unnecessarily.
I,
The pacing is off.
I'm totally fine with the length of Lord of the Rings, but not many movies are Lord of the Rings. So
So you say you're fine with the length of Lord of the Rings. What about The Hobbit?
no, the Hobbit's a short story or a novella.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it should
it's
not be 9 hours long.
yes, yeah. I
I felt
love
that this
some
was a
of
dig at
the
The Hobbit, but yeah.
I love some of the BBC radio productions of The Hobbit from, I
Yeah.
think it's the 70s, maybe
Okay.
early 80s. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're lovely pieces of radio. And I think they're like 6 hours long or something like that,
Okay.
which would be like novella length if you think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah,
And I was gonna say like to read it out as well because you read faster than you speak, so
yeah,
that makes sense that it would take that long.
yeah,
And like a picture tells 1,000 words. Like what takes an entire chapter of a battle scene or like
yeah,
running away from a dragon takes five
yeah.
minutes.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
like when the BBC did it too, the acting was as if you were telling the story to a child, which is, I mean, that's what the book was
Oh.
intended for.
Yeah.
So, even kind of the dramatic moments are told in a little bit more relaxed way, that would not scare a 6-year-old.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, like I said, yeah, there's some amazing things that were done in the 70s with The Hobbit.
Um. Poop.
But when you're a big movie studio, you
Yeah.
need lots of movies.
And if it's a franchise people are already invested in, I feel like as well. So here we've got like the new plan. Often in cozies, I feel like they never tell you what the new plan is. They don't brainstorm a thing and then go and do it. They just skip and go and do it.
Yeah,
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 like because there's no like uh need otherwise.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing with cozies, like Act 11 can also be very compressed because once the sleuth has figured stuff out in Act 10, nailing the murderer is, is like you said, the drawing room moment, which
Yeah.
is very typical in all cozies.
So I'm going to close this and then just go on the outline and open these all up. So you can see here, like, okay, so in the proportion of this story having, does it say? Uh, Wait, review chapters. So I have 29 chapters in this story. I have two in Act 1, two in Act 2, two in Act 3, two in Act 4. Acts 5, 6, and 7 have either 4 or 5
Yep.
chapters. Act 8 has 3. And then like 9, 10, 11, 12 have 1 each. Act 9 will probably be made of a couple of chapters, I would think. But then it goes down again. So we kind of see it's kind of like this kind of like curve and goes up and then down, really down quite quickly with the
Mhm.
pacing, which is, and it feels about right as well for what a cozy mystery would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think depending on what people want and like what our plans are for next week, I feel like this would be a good, like maybe taking this and kind of like showing how you can use the novel clock with prompting to kind of like flesh out all the gaps. We want to get some like solid scenes down, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so before Corey and I go, because I just noticed it's 6 o'clock, um, does anyone have any questions about the novel clock, cozy mysteries, Novelcrafter in general, all that stuff?
It's 6 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock.
What? And then John Luke will be like, but it's 11 o'clock.
No, Jean-Luc is here with me on the East
Oh, is he in the
Coast.
East Coast?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was more central. Okay. Okay, Joe would be like,
Joe,
what? It's
Joe, on
11
the other
o'clock.
hand, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Joe and Mari will be like, wait, what? It's so nice that it's summer because it's absolutely gorgeous outside. And like often in the winter when I finish streams, it's pitch black and I have to like fumble for the lights. But yeah, this is nice. I
Yeah,
never
and
happen to.
out of the clear blue sky, it's like 78 degrees in New England today, but tomorrow the high is going to be 46. So it's like typical
Yeah,
New England weather.
I mean that just sounds like British weather. They've aptly named it given the
Yep.
swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we're getting people's thanks and like times, but no questions. So I feel like we are safe to go to head off. Thank you everyone for coming. This has been
Yeah,
fun as
thank you.
always. What did you think about this time? Like, do you prefer the hour earlier or this time for a live stream? Let us know as well in the comments or chat. Um, yeah, because like oh, Emery might be able to set up a balcony furniture. Amazing. Yeah, you can just go and sit and enjoy the weather. Like this, I know obviously America is different to Europe, but I know a lot of our European viewers will have a long weekend. So I hope you all enjoy yourself and have good holidays. And I'll see you on Wednesday. Glad you all enjoyed it. Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.